Welcome back to Nothing But Nets. It's good to be back. I got a full panel today. I got Pete from Nets Fans, I got LBL for life, and I got John. We're going to talk about the Nets roster, a tweet that came out from a Nets analyst discussing a potential starting lineup and rotation that I think can be better than people are expecting. I don't think it's a bottom-dwelling team, as is kind of the general expectation and of not just the Net fans, but of the NBA community. I'm going to go to everybody. Pete, I'll start with you. Introduce yourself. Where can we find you?
So what's up, everybody? My name is Pete. I'm the host of Net Fans a Brooklyn Nets podcast. I've had on former players, credentialed media, and pretty much anyone around Nets lore in the Nets world. I also cover the Nets for Off the Ball Network. You can find me at Net Fans as you just see over there, and check my podcast on YouTube.
LBL, where can we find you?
Usually I'm on Twitter, on X as LBL for Life 1. I'm also on Instagram under the same name, LBL for Life 1. And I always talking Nets. I'm trying to will this Subway Series into existence. I'm a Yankee fan, but I still want the Mets to make it,
And then Jonathan, we see Jonathan everywhere, all over the Net community. John, what's up, and where can everyone find you?
Gary, what's going on? Good evening, Nets world. Always fun to talk basketball with you three fine gentlemen. If you ever want to talk basketball with me, you can follow me on my Twitter, OS91413John. It's always good to talk good Brooklyn basketball, and it's a great time. It's the fall. We got Liberty almost trying to get to the finals. We got Yankees and Mets in the playoffs, and Brooklyn. It's going to be a fun year. But it's going to be a fun night, so I look forward to some good basketball.
All right, you guys ready to get this started?
Let's go.
First things first, I want to – Billy Reinhardt's tweet I thought was interesting. It's a lineup. I never really include Ben Simmons in my thoughts about the Nets because I just don't really consider him a part of the team because he never plays. But the starting five that he discussed was Ben Simmons at the point, Cam at the 2, Jalen Wilson, Cam Johnson, and Nick Claxton. To me, and I'll let you guys, I know you guys are going to disagree with me, you have an all defensive type player at the point. You have an all defensive type player at the 5. You have an all-world scorer who can go for 30 any night at the 2. And then you have one wing who can shoot the lights out when he's on fire and doesn't do much else. And then Jalen Wilson's a guy I like a lot. He rebounds well for his position. He's tough. He can shoot the long ball. He's a pretty good 3-and-D guy who also rebounds his position well. So I look at that team and no, it's not a playoff team. It's not going to be – it's not really even a play-in team. But it's not a bottom 3 or 4 team in the league either. I think this is around a 30-win team. LBL, I know you fundamentally disagree with me, so – that starting 5 and then Dorian Finney-Smith and Clowney off the bench, I think is decent depth. What's your kind of overview of that team? And realistically, how many games do you think they win? I say 30 if that team plays.
Well, here's what I would say. I would say 30 is not out of the realm of possibility if they were trying to win. So that would worry me because I feel like with 30 wins, you might end up with the, 6th pick or something like that, So, but as far as, ability, you always want guys to try to win. So it's not like they're, especially with the veterans, they're going to be out there trying to do their best to look good for other teams, right? So they're going to be playing their best and we'll find out, how they can go. But as far as I don't think 30 wins is out of the realm of possibility, but I think it's our job to make sure that doesn't happen. And I don't mean fans, but I mean that's Jordy and Mark's job, to make sure that didn't happen. And just to give you a little bit on that, I remember when what's his name? The first coach, Atkinson. When we had Atkinson, there were for my money, there were games that there were at least a half a dozen games every year between him and Nash that I felt we could have won, but he was overly cautious, especially in back-to-backs,
Yeah.
and we didn't win. And so I'm like, if you could do that for that reason, for whatever reason you're saying, then you can actually do that load management and all that stuff with this team. And so maybe reduce those 30 wins or so to low 20s or 19 or 18. That's what I'm saying.
Let me move this to Pete. Pete, I want your take on this as well. That roster, I just gave you the lineup, that rotation. If they're healthy and if they're on the court, how many games do you think that team realistically wins?
I could see about 25. I think LBL made a couple great points in that a good coach can win you, I'd say about maybe 5 games by making a scheme or something. You can always surprise a team, a last place team. We always see, every, couple, every couple of weeks we'll upset like one of the top teams or something that you're just shocked by. I love Ben Simmons and Cam Thomas together is the perfect backcourt. They complement each other perfectly. I love that connection that they have together. You have Ben passing the ball out, and then you have Cam, who's going to always be having the ball in his hands and shooting. That's a good mix, especially on defense. That Cam could, he could be a little bit of a liability, right? If we're being honest, he could be a liability, especially in the pick and roll. Having Ben out there helps a lot. I'm very big into Jalen Wilson, but I'm not sure if we're going to be seeing him start. But just for this hypothetical saying, I think he fits perfectly in that lineup. The thing that concerns me about the lineup is the offense between what are you going to do with Simmons and Clax? How's that offense going to work out? Is the spacing going to work out? I'm not sure, but that's my take on all that.
Good take.
And I want to get to Jonathan. Jonathan, Simmons, Cam, Jalen Wilson, Claxton, a bench of Schroeder, DFS, Clowney. It's 8 deep right there. What do you think of that roster? And if they play, how many games do you think they can realistically win if they're healthy and on the court?
I mean, we could all say that you got a good group of vets. You got young guys on to prove themselves. I mean, if you want to aim for a 20-win bracket in the first half of the season, I think this team, if they're all as positive as they are right now, I mean, it could be achievable. But let's also look at this factor. Jordy and Sean, what they say, everybody's got to earn their spot this season. So your hypothetical does make sense, because let's be honest, there's not going to be a set starting 5 this whole season. It could be a different combination every 5, 10, 15 games, depending on moves that happen, what rookies stand out, what prospects, take the bull by the horns. And I think that's a good way for this team to be, because you can't rely on your credentials. You can't rely on what you did in summer league. You can't rely on what you did in college. It's what can you do now? How can you step up, and how can you be part of this future? Now, looking at that starting 5, I agree with Pete. I mean, Ben and Claxton, you saw a small sample size. When Katie and Kyrie were here, they worked well because of their defensive skills. But when they were asked to lead the offense, Ben and Claxton just didn't seem like they clicked. They feel very too similar offensively. I think Ben doesn't really ever set Claxton up for lobs or a jump shot or something like that. And I think it kind of brings Claxton down a bit. It almost feels like they're 2 little bumper cars that don't connect. Wilson and Johnson, your 3 and your 4, you could have some good nights with that, but you could also have some really bad nights depending on your competition. So it's really going to depend on how those guys click. But if we're being realistic, the goal is to get a top pick this year in next year's draft, but it's also to offset the vets for valuable capital, and that could happen between now and the deadline. Now, if these guys will start playing well, like Dorian Finney-Smith said, we're going to shake the NBA. You're doing that to get your value up. So I think if the Nets play their cards right, we can have a really good, successful fire sale these next few months and set ourselves up well for the draft.
I'll come right back to you, John, because I know we kind of agree on this. And I don't think that Sean Marks is the right guy for the rebuild. We've talked about this before. I don't think he's the guy that can rebuild this ship. I'm still looking at a roster here that I don't think is all that bad. Like, I know you want some veterans. So I wanted to keep Schroeder because he's on an expiring deal, and Bogdanovich because he's played this role before with the Tri. Those are the 2 veterans I would keep until at least the deadline, if not for the whole season. The fact that DFS and Cam Johnson are both here and losing value every day, to me tells me that Marks can't do this. And if you're playing DFS and Cam Johnson, you need them to play well so they don't lose any more value.
Exactly.
So with those guys here and going to play this year, what are your thoughts on that? And has Sean Marks waited too long? Has he has he deteriorated their value too long, and now they're going to help you win too many games?
If we're being realistic, they probably should have been traded. I mean, Doe, especially last year, I know there was a rumor that OKC wanted to give up 2 picks and a player, but the player at that time, his contract was a little high, so I think Marks didn't want to take back the salary, so that kind of went out the window, and I thought that was wasted opportunity. I think what you have going for you this season is injuries can happen any moment. I mean, already in spring training, if you've caught up, some guys are getting little injuries here or there, so not every team's going to get through the season with who they got, and that's where the Nets are going to capitalize. Like if a team is desperate and you need Johnson's offense or you need Doe's defense can make any contender right now that much better to win a championship. I think to capitalize on Doe would be the first guy to try to get off this team because defensively he's wasting cardio on our court right now. You don't want that.
I'm shocked he's still on the team. Yeah, I'm shocked that
I'm
DFS
shocked
is still on his
too.
roster.
But let's say we go into the season, have Doe play the first 10, 20 games. If his defense is great, he's giving you 10, 11 points a game, you ship him out. If there's somebody offering you a protected pick or at worst 3 seconds and a prospect player, you take that and you move forward. If you can get that type of combination of a package, you move forward. But yeah, I think Sean has to capitalize between now and the deadline. If he keeps Johnson, I'll be shocked. If he keeps Doe, I'll be even more shocked because it was confirmed yesterday that Doe will leave. So you have to capitalize on them right now and get them off this team. And if the Nets can do it successfully, including Ben, if he gives you something for these first 46 games, the Nets could have a successful fire sale between now and the deadline and get a whole bunch of extra assets that will help us towards next year with the draft.
Let me swing this to Pete. Pete, Cam Johnson, DFS are still here. What veterans do you want to keep? And has Marks waited too long? And is Marks the right guy for this rebuild? Or should they look for someone else to help rebuild the ship?
He's absolutely the right guy for the rebuild, right? He's shown that his scouting department is elite. He's picked pretty good guys with very low draft picks, right? And this is why they're not traded. I'm going to put you into the mind of a GM. You guys were in training camp. You want to see what your roster looks like before you're going to make a deal. Why would you give up, assets for a player if you don't even know what you have? That's why you're going to wait at least maybe a month or two into the season to see what you have. Then you reinforce what you have. That's why you're not going to see a deal now. If a deal was going to happen, it was going to happen like a month ago, okay? Dorian Finney-Smith, I had Jay from BK on my podcast. Apparently, Dodo was told he was going to get traded.
Yeah.
To Dallas. Agent told. Player told. I sat behind the Nets bench the last game before the trade deadline with Dallas and the Nets. He thought he was going to Dallas. It was almost done. I'm kind of shocked as well that he was not traded. He's going to get traded. It's going to happen. But to answer your question, he should have been traded. Yes, Marks waited way too long, but he is the man for this rebuild. You got to wait. We just have to wait to trade these guys. That's the reality.
I want to address that, and then I'll get to LBL. I've been criticized for being this is the shit on Sean Marks podcast. I don't want it to be that way. I just don't think Sean Marks is very good, just objectively. He tried to fill out a roster that had KD and Kyrie and Harden with guys like DeAndre Bembry. I don't understand what he thinks a complete.
Yeah, can I interrupt you for a second, Gary?
Yeah,
I'm going to say this. Now, was your question? Do I think Marks can build out a roster, or do I think that he can be useful for a rebuild? Those are two totally different questions.
Do you think he can take what we have now and in X amount of years turn this into a real contending team?
I like Sean Marks. But I got to be honest that I don't think he's shown that he could round out a roster. He waits sometimes a little bit too long to add a guy. We had those great players that you just talked about. And yes, we signed Blake Griffin. Yes, we signed LaMarcus Aldridge from the buyout market. But sometimes you got to make a move before then. Sometimes, we already went all in with James Harden. Why not push just a little bit more and make sure you get a guy that you know is going to make a difference? Those guys were good for when they played, especially, during the Bucks series year. But there were a lot of times that he could have made different moves that would have helped the Nets that he didn't make. No GM is perfect, right? But that it is what it is. I think he's good at rebuilding. I don't think he's shown as of right now that he can round up a team when the team is contending.
I'll address that in a minute, but I want to get to LBL. Sean Marks, this roster, is he the guy that can steer the ship into contention 3-4 years, whatever it may be down the road? Can he take this and rebuild this ship?
Well, I'm going to agree with Pete, and I'm going to say, and I did say this over Twitter, that based on the fact, he's had more hits than misses based on, the low draft picks that we had, the Jarrett Allens and the Nick Claxtons and those guys. He's had more hits than he's had misses. When he missed, he might have missed bad with maybe Rondé Hollis Jefferson, or with Zanin Musa and the other European guy. I can't remember his name. The one who had
Karutz?
Yeah, Karooks, yeah, Rodion Karooks. But he did have some nice hits as well. He did have some nice hits as well. So I think he is the guy that that you have to trust his draft record to say, okay, let's go and let's try to get and I'm saying through these two drafts. And as I'm listening to Pete, what I'm hearing, I mean, he can tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is it's almost like Marx is in a new classification. You know how we all said, Atkinson is a great developmental coach, and he can take you from the lottery to developing your players, to them believing in themselves, to establishing that culture. Maybe Marx is the same way. That, yeah, he could draft the great guys and this and that, but then when it comes time to, okay, now we have to make our next step. So maybe he'll only be here for those two drafts and possibly that third year. But after that, we may need a new GM who's actually skilled at, somebody who would never say, I'm going to trade Levert and Allen for Harden. You know what I'm saying?
And let me get to that, right? Because this is my problem. I agree with you. And the one thing I've always given him credit for, Marks, is he's a good drafter. He drafts exceptionally well. Cam Thomas, Nick Claxton, these guys all came in either the second round or late. Jalen Wilson's a guy I like a lot, right? I'm going to give him credit because I'm not a hater of Sean Marks. I just don't think he's very good. Mm-hmm. What I don't think he does is realizes the depth of his roster. Last year, he fired Vaughn because he couldn't believe this team was winning. The roster wasn't any good. How do you not how did you assess the roster? You know what I'm saying? Like that was never a playoff team last year. It was a terrible roster. It didn't make any sense. You had all these wings, right? There was no way that team was going to compete. And then at the deadline, he trades for.
But you know what? To be fair, though, I agree with you. But, and I told you, I'm part of the block, so I go to a lot of the Barclays games. But if you would have polled all of those Net fans in that next section, they all thought, hey, we're gonna try to slip in and get this 8th seed, or we're gonna get into, and that's what I'm saying. That's the biggest problem, is that, and you know what? Speaking of the post that got this thing started with Billy Reinhardt.
Yeah.
Billy blocked me probably like 6 months ago or so, or it was before, the draft, but he blocked me because I kept saying to him, I said, yo, you're just sounding like a parrot for Marks. You keep making up these excuses and everything. And this is before we made the trade and got back our draft picks. Because remember, before we did that, they were talking about trying to make some moves so that we could get back into contention with the Twins, with Mikal Bridges. Remember getting that other star to pair with Mikal? And Billy was putting all this stuff out there, and I'm like, man, you're looking like you're Marx's press agent and everything. So
I mean, before they got their picks back from Houston, I didn't know what to do either. And here's my thing: like you were saying, can we slip into the 8th seed? Right? Net fans like, okay, we can. Is that really like
Gary? They were competing with Ben Simmons like those first couple of games because the team was built around Ben Simmons.
But is that where you want to be? That's where the balls are right now. You got a bunch of veterans and a team that might win 35, 37 games. Is that where you want to be?
Not at all.
More. What he went in the first 24 games? Weren't they like 10-12 or something like that?
13-10. 13-10.
13-10. That's about a 500 team if everybody stays healthy. Big if.
Is that
right?
where you want to be though? Maybe be
No.
500 and everything goes right.
Well, Gary, can I answer this? Because I didn't really get to give my take on Marks. I answered more on Johnson, though. Listen, we look at when Marks took this team over in 2016. The Nets had nothing. We were literally the Dust Bowl of the Eastern Conference, and we could all agree with that. And what did he do? He took on people nobody really knew, and then he took on flyers on guys like a Joe Harris, a Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and he drafted
Justin
Allen.
Hamilton.
Yes, like they were these guys who like nobody was really looking at as top guys, and these guys all came with something to prove. There was a culture being formed after that 1 year. Then we got D'Lo, and after that 1 year, this team was stepping up against everybody, and everybody's like, "Watch out for Brooklyn! They're coming. They compete every damn night. They might surprise some people." We were doing that.
The ceiling. That's the issue.
I know. But then fast forward to after the playoffs against 76ers, when all on. Then for a year, Katie didn't play. And then after that, we had Katie.
You're a robot, John.
John, you're breaking up. Can you like try to refresh something? You're breaking up real bad. Let me
In the first few games.
You're a robot.
You're breaking up really bad. Can you refresh that real quick? All right, I'm gonna.
While he refreshes, I'll make the point in saying that they just didn't have the ceiling, and that's why they didn't continue with those D'Lo teams. And I'll go ahead, Gary, if you had something to say before John comes back.
No, and then I think Kenny was like the best coach this team's had since like Chuck Daly, right? Like I really do. I love Kenny.
Wow.
And can you name a better one? Honestly,
Not strategically, he wasn't.
Byron Scott was good for a veteran team. Like he had Kidd. He had like those kind of.
Don't forget, you're saying for a veteran.
Wait, Gary, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're better now.
Remember with Scott.
All right.
He had.
Let John finish his point.
Let John finish his point real quick.
Yeah, sorry about that. So like I was saying, so we had Katie Carr, we had Karis Spence, we had the core. For a few games, we looked pretty good. And then the James Harden thing happened. And for some reason, Sean Marks sent 7 picks, all unprotected. There was no protections. And the moment we're like, hey, we got James, Kyrie, KD, 3 of the best scorers in the league. That should get you championship. And for 1 year, it looked like that until it didn't. Injuries happened, didn't work out. Fast forward to what you're saying, Gary. The bench, I mean, for all purposes, that following year looked pretty abysmal. DeAndre Bembry, James Johnson, Javon Carter. I mean, these guys.
What do you do? Yeah. So here's my. I hated the Harden trade when they made it. The trade to get Harden. I look at guys like LeVert and Allen. I said, you have so much depth on this roster. And then they traded those guys. And Prince sucked for the Nets. Like we could look back at Prince with like rose-colored glasses, but he was horrible with the Nets. But
right.
Allen and LeVert were all-star caliber players who they gave up on for Harden. And look, Harden's going to run the point, and Harden's going to take a ton of shots. But he's going to take shots away from KD and Kyrie, who are 2 of the most efficient scorers to ever live. And now Harden's going to take shots away from those guys. It's just.
Gary, do you not remember he was playing with MVP type numbers when he came on?
So were Harden and so were Ivory.
They were elite on that. You cannot tell me that big 3 team.
This is the argument that I got in with Locked On Nets, and they said how dumb I was. What is Harden adding that you don't already have in Kyrie and Durant? It's just overkill.
Are you serious?
I'm being dead serious.
Taking it to the hole, elite passing.
Kyrie can't take the ball to the hole.
Of course he can. But the thing is, when you have 3 guys like that, it opens up the game in such. How many
basketballs are you playing with?
How many? Okay, was that team a good team? Yes or no? If Harden is healthy, if Kyrie's healthy, do you think we win a championship that year? It can't be that bad.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you: if Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen are on that team in the playoffs, they win the championship?
Yes.
Maybe not. I don't know. I think it had Jarrett Allen
how good LeVert was in the playoffs both times.
If LaMarcus Aldridge stays healthy and you take Joe Harris off the court, do you think that team wins a championship? What team has more of a ceiling if they're healthy? The big 3 team or having LeVert and Jarrett Allen?
I think Allen and LeVert. I think Allen and LeVert too.
You're crazy. You're wrong. You're wrong.
But let's just look at this too. Like Gary's saying, Sean did make mistakes. The bench wasn't good. Then James Harden, that second season, Harden looked like he didn't want to be there. I mean, he was letting people steal balls on him.
We're talking about the talent in the ceiling. I'm not talking about the guy's personality. The guy's personality fucking sucks, and he's a dick.
Right. But let's look at this too. Like what Gary's saying, Sean Marks made mistakes after. Sean Marks made mistakes after that. He didn't hold any of these guys accountable. And that's the biggest thing that Sean Marks, that I really don't think he should be our GM. But here's the thing. He placated Katie, Kyrie, James, gave him everything they wanted. Did the same thing with Bridges, sent him where he wanted to go. Like, when is Sean Marks going to have the backbone to stand up and be like, listen, you guys have all the accolades, but you got to start playing like all-stars. You got to stop with the ego crap, the drama, the off-court stuff, because none of that was fun for me. When we were on the court playing basketball, that was fun, but everything off the court, we didn't need that. We needed ESPN talking about us like we're a walking plague of toxicity. That needed to change. And if Katie, Kyrie, and James would got their heads out of their rears and just start playing basketball, this team could have won. Let's take the COVID out, let's take all this stuff. If these guys were just sat at a table, ironed out all the differences, they could have done something, but they didn't. Sean Marks held nobody accountable. So, Gary, to your point, we should get a new GM after this year. Let Sean finish the rebuild. Find somebody that thinks 2 to 3 years down the road. Not what Sean does. Sean's a 1 to year type guy, and we don't need that anymore. We have our capital.
I'm sorry to cut you. I got one question for you guys, then I'll shut up. Before the 7-Eleven trades at the deadline, the Nets were doing really good. They had that amazing win streak, right? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of, I don't blame Marks for that happening, for that breakup that year in particular, right? What do you think happens if the Nets play out the year with those guys? I think at the very least, you make a deep run. You're at least the second seed. And, maybe you could win it all. Maybe I don't know.
They just got swept by the Celtics the year before with the same roster. It was basically the same roster. They just got swept by the Celtics.
You had Harden sandbagging, right? And then you had
Harden was already gone. Like, that was when Simmons was not in the conversation, right? Like, that when they got swept by the Celtics, they had already made the Harden for Simmons trade.
Yeah. I'm saying, but that year Harden sandbagged them record-wise, and they had to face the Celtics. And let's remember those games. They lose like 5 points each game. It was the closest.
They lost every game was close. The first game they lost on the last shot of the game by Tatum.
And let's face it, the Celtics' toughest matchup might have been the Nets that entire season. Not season. That playoff run, right? Statistically, that was the closest playoff series point margin wise that they had their entire playoff run, even in the finals. And I'll shut up now.
But to Pete's point there, that
LBL hasn't talked about it. LBL, get in on this.
No, one thing I wanted to say about Marks is, so I agree with Pete in terms of we should let him, draft these next 2 years. And then after that, we shall see what happens. But the one thing that scares me about Marks is that the long occurring theme, the enduring issue with Marks is how he really wants to play basketball. And so part of that for me is, if you get a chance, say we were to get a Boozer or something, right, in the second draft, right, in the 26th draft, like, my thing is he gonna pass over him and get a wing instead because he wants to play a certain D'Antoni style? And it's almost like Marks is an anti inside out guy. I know the league has changed in some ways, but it's like, we have to address, the fact that, listen, we can't just keep shooting 53s every game and doing the Kenny Atkinson either drive or I either want a layup or a three. It's like,
let me jump in, because let me kind of ask a question to everyone. We all agree that the next 2 drafts, 25 and 26, with our own picks, we need to take the best player available. Correct? We're not in a position now where we can start drafting for fit. We need to take the best player available. Do we all agree with that?
Yes.
Right.
Now, John, who's the best player available in next year's draft?
Hey, like you and me, we're gonna debate this, man, between Ace and Cooper. But what the good thing is, you and I know how to break down their games. Like what we said, Cooper defensively, I would say, has a slight edge, but offensively, Ace, he has more of a set jump shot than Cooper does. But as far as their weaknesses go, I think they can be easily refined on a team like Brooklyn, and they will be the head of what we do with our future. I think if we get one, we get Cooper. If we get two, we get Ace. We move forward. That's what we should be aiming for. Now, let's say something happens, we miss out both those guys. I know Harper is that guy there, but he's looking to as a de facto 3 foot we need a point guard. But I'm telling you, if VJ Edgecombe has a really good college season, I might take him at 3, man. I mean, we can all agree on this. Athletically, he's probably the most athletic player in this whole draft. If you have a VJ Edgecombe, there's so much potential and unknown with him that if we did get him, I think he could be a steal pick, first round pick selection for us.
I'm glad that VJ's playing for Baylor. It's only about an hour away from me, hour and a half away from me. So I'm gonna go check out a bunch of his games this year. But look, Pete, have you followed this draft class? Have you watched them play? And who do you think has the most upside? Who would you pick if you could have any of the young kids in this upcoming draft class?
I started doing some research and talking to some people, and
Nice.
I've been reassured that that Cooper Flag is the real deal.
Yes.
That he might be able to play in the NBA today in a smaller role as a 19-year-old freshman in college would be able to contribute to an NBA team today. Saying that, I think I'm going to make up a draft board and change it over and over and over. Right now, he's my number one. I've been big on Jay Edgecombe over and over. I've heard concerns that he might be a little bit too short. He might be like without shoes, like 6'3", and playing him and Cam Thomas next to each other. I always say pick with talent, but the idea of two small guards like that kind of scares me a little bit. So I always pick with talent first, but Dylan Harper's been sold on me a little bit more. I'm going to give him another look. I think you need a point guard. I don't know if you want to wait till next year to get one of those guys. I haven't heard anything. I haven't watched anything of them, but I know that they've been very hyped. But pretty much anyone in the top 5 out of the Italian point guard, what's his name, Torre or something like that.
Nolan Taylor.
Yeah,
him, Flag, Harper, and Ace. I would be happy with any of those, and I think you could build around any of those guys. Ace probably has the most offensive output potential. His shot selection is a little waning, but he's a young player, right? He's the man on every team he goes to. That's going to be learned. There's a lot more to look into with these guys. But if the Nets can be in the top 4, top 5, I feel very good.
Hey, yeah. Pete, I want to get to LB in just a second. But there's a comment that came up in the chat that I want to address. I think it's an interesting question. As both teams have torn down and begin to rebuild, who appears to be a better landing spot for talent, the Nets or the Raptors? This is a complicated question, right? Because I think the Raptors are a better run organization that is closer to winning now than the Nets are. But are players really going to want to go to Canada? Because historically, they haven't wanted to stay there. So if you were rebuilding, if you were a free agent, what's a better landing destination right now?
I'm gonna give you some tea because you just said that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Kevin Durant almost got traded to Toronto. That was a real right before Phoenix. That was a very real possibility that he was going to go to Toronto. Okay.
Wow.
The whole exchange currency thing can be an issue, but that's figured out by now. Players don't love, obviously, having to go through customs. That's an issue. Toronto is a beautiful city. I've been there twice myself. Very similar to New York City. I don't think that's an issue. But looking at the roster, I say they have very good young talent. But the problem with the Toronto Raptors roster is that their guys are all making big money. They're young guys. Barrett's making a lot of money. Quigley's making a lot of money. Barnes is making a lot of money. Right. So you're kind of building around them. The Nets, the guy who comes in, the star, is going to be built around him, right? You'll have a draft Cooper. I'm going to get this up, okay? Cooper Flag, max player, and a roster. In Toronto, they already have like their main 3 kind of set. They could, I don't know with the cap space if they could add somebody big, but that's kind of already set. You can't really add too much after that. That's my opinion. You're muted, Gary.
Yeah. Toronto's already got Quickly, Barrett, Scotty Barnes. They already have talented players. They're far beyond where the Nets are in terms of their rebuild. I'm not really familiar with their cap situation, but it's a winning organization. They were good for 10 years before they started to rebuild. So it's an organization that can win. I would say if players want to go to Toronto, Toronto's clearly a better landing spot. I just don't know if players are going to want to go there.
They also have a higher tax rate.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good question, Gary. I mean, we're looking at it right now from an honest standpoint. The Raptors have their franchise guy, Scotty Barnes, but to what Pete said, you already got Scotty under contract. You got Quickly, you got Barrett. Like they're kind of at a little ceiling right now with room to grow. I'm kind of surprised they want to tank this season because that's what Jakob Poeltl said. I'm surprised that he's the one who said it because you're not really supposed to say it on media day. But he said they're not looking to win right now, so. Okay, that worries me a little bit, but if the Nets get a Cooper or Ace, we're right there. And the thing is, I know LBL doesn't like this, but if the Nets trade the vets off this season and get the draft capital, we could have $100 million in cap space. Now, what we plan to do with that cap space will be a discussion for next year, but if the Nets do it wisely, they could have almost an equal amount of cap space in 2026 if they do the smart thing and take on expiring contracts for more capital. So the Nets, if they get their top picks in these next two drafts, they're right there again where they can have cap space.
Okay. Well,
stars to come here. So I think the Nets will be on that trajectory very soon.
LBL, I want to bring the other question back to you before we sidetrack with the Raptors question. We were talking about the 2025 draft class.
Yes.
Cooper, Ace, Harper, VJ, Nolan Torrey. Have you followed it closely? Have you looked at the talent? And if so, if you were picking first and you could have any of those guys, who would you take?
Well, I got to give you the cop-out answer because it's too early for me to tell.
That's fine.
I did look at, the McDonald's game, and I looked at one game. I think it was the other game where Dylan Harper and Cooper played, where the one where he was cursing at Cooper.
Yeah.
And then I did see I wasn't really impressed with Ace in that McDonald's game. He didn't really impress. Dylan Harper was probably the most impressive guy in that game, but of course he holds on to the ball, so it's easier to be impressive when you're the point guard. But so for me, and this is what I tease John about all the time, I'm like, well, can we at least let them play a college game? Can we watch a college game before we break down all of this stuff? And the thing that I get on BKNY about is that this guy goes to all of these, draftnet.com and this and that and these things, and he uses that as the Bible. And I'm like, I never use that stuff. I mean, I look at it when it's available, like NBADraft.net and everything, but those things are so inaccurate. I would trust Pete's eyes more. I would trust John's eyes more, your eyes more, watching them play than I would these guys that come up with these things. And the way that they really, when you really see that they're copping out, is when they'll tell you something like, "Oh, this new guard, he compares to Anthony Black," and it's like nobody's seen Anthony Black play yet. You know what I mean? You're always comparing
NBA guys, a guy that's played 15 games. Yeah.
So but so for me, I have to see them play. I'm excited because I just jailbroke my Fire Stick so that I'll have all the sports, so that I'll be able to follow these games. And I'm excited about that. So I'm going to be following Duke and Rutgers and Texas and Baylor and all of them. And I have to see. Now, I did hear you say one thing about, I think maybe it was Pete that said something about VJ. And he was saying that he might be closer to 6'3". And it's funny because the first time I saw him play, when I looked at his highlights, and then I looked at the McDonald's game, he kind of reminded me of like a teenage Wade, and that's what I saw. And it's like they're about the same size, just the explosiveness and everything.
That's
and
the comp that I get from people. It's funny you say that, LBL.
Okay.
The comp I saw in my mind was more Stevie Francis, but I like the Wade thing. I like the Wade comp.
I got baby Ant-Man, man. I'm shooting high on that one.
I don't think that I don't think he's as advanced as Stevie Francis was as a ball handler,
Yeah, that's fair. I want to bring this back. I want to change gears a little bit. I want to go to our highest paid player, Ben Simmons. I know this is gonna insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But I want everyone's take. If he's healthy, if he's on the court, if he plays, I know that's unlikely to happen, but just follow my hypothetical. If he's playing, what do you expect from him as far as stats and as far as impacting winning on both sides of the ball? What do you expect from Simmons if he's on the court? Pete, I'll start with you.
How many minutes is he playing? Is he playing 15 minutes a game? Is he playing?
You tell me. You tell me. What do you foresee him doing here?
I think 15 minutes a game, 20 minutes. I'll be very nice and say 20 minutes a game with this newfound like optimism. I could see him putting up like man, for 20 minutes,
6, 6, and 6,
yeah,
5, 5, and 5.
5, yeah, 5, 5, and 5. Let's say just for fun, right? I'm gonna say let's say he starts, plays 30 minutes, so I can give a better picture to this conversation. Let's say he starts. Let's say he plays. I don't know. I'm just making this up. 60 games. I'm going to be very optimistic. 60
That's very
games.
optimistic.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to happen, but for our hypothetical, okay?
Yeah.
And he plays, maybe like 20, about just under 30 minutes, like 26, 27, 28 minutes. I could see him putting up like, man, I want to, if he actually goes to the hole, I could see him putting up 10. If he doesn't go to the hole, I'm looking at like maybe like a 7. I want to say like a 7, 8, and 5 sort of thing. Maybe switch around those numbers. Maybe he gets closer to 8 assists, 5, 6 rebounds a game. Like I just don't know the role. But one thing I do want to say, because you brought up Ben Simmons, did you guys see not the lineup, the roster that they posted? It says guard/F forward. So does that mean he's going to be playing power forward also?
Well, I want to ask this question. Let me get to the other 2 pounds. I have a hypothetical rotation. I have a unit I want to use. I want to ask you about that unit, but I want everyone to answer this question first as far as Ben Simmons. I kind of agree with you. I kind of see 8 points, probably 6, 7 rebounds, and probably 6, 7 assists. So I would say like 8, 6, and 7. That would be my guess for him this year.
I think that's a good guess, better than mine.
John, how about you?
I mean, look at it. We're talking about Ben Simmons before the season has even a chance to have a preseason game.
It's hypothetical, I think you cut out, John.
John cut out. I'll go to LB.
Okay, so I would say I wouldn't think that it's out of I think that your guess is pretty good, like 8, 7, 6 or something like that. Because when he did play, he was getting about 6, 6, 6, right?
Yeah.
So I think and then that was with better players on the team. So now with lesser players on the team, he'd probably be called on to score a little bit more, But I can see him doing that. But one of the things I wanted to go back to with Reinhardt real quick was I don't like that lineup. I mean, it's fine if we're showcasing, but I'm trying to figure out what good does that do for Clowney. It doesn't do any good for him to be coming off the bench.
This is why Marks has got to move DFS and Cam, because Jalen Wilson and Clowney have to get those minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like Clowney and Wilson need to play those minutes.
Let me say this while we're talking about that. If all of the spots are up for grabs, right?
Right.
In what world? I mean, maybe you guys know talent, but in what world is Wilson better than Clowney?
Well, he's not. I mean, he just isn't. I like both those guys, but I mean, Clowney looks to be one of the best player they've drafted in a long time.
I agree.
In a long time. Levert, maybe. Clowney, to me, looks like he has the makings of what could be a borderline all-star player. So he's got to be on the court. And no, as much as I like Jalen Wilson, he's my boy. He's from Texas, about 20 minutes away from me. He's not better than Clowney. You guys agree with that? Pete, John, you guys agree with that?
Gary, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah, let me just get my quick take in here. Listen, what I'm seeing right now is everybody's saying such great things about Ben. Ben's looking good in practice. He dived for a ball. He makes jump shots. He makes 3-point shots. This is the Ben Simmons cycle we've all come and known to see. Now, the question is, like Pete said, how many games is this guy playing? How many minutes? Given his back, I wouldn't play more than 20, 25 minutes. He's not a 30-minute player anymore. I don't see it with, because I'll be honest, his injury, I would say it's a chronic injury. You don't play somebody more than 30 minutes. So if he gives you 20, 25 minutes, he gives you 7 to 8 points. He gives you 10 rebounds or 9 assists. If he could get through the first 46 games or half that, because I'm not putting any expectations on this guy. But if he gets you half that, and there's a team out there that's willing to give you expiring contracts, a second round pick for him, I'll take that and move on. The goal
100%.
right now, if this is, I'm gonna call this Sean Marks Houdini trick. If he can clean up the mess that he made with Ben Simmons and get us back expiring contracts and a pick for him, good on you, Sean. You're making a case for yourself next year. But we have to move on from this. I'm tired of seeing the same stuff with Ben Simmons. We all know he can do this in practice. To be honest with you, he's probably one of the greatest of all time in practice. But playing when actual games is a whole completely different story, and I'm ready to move forward on that, man. So
Let
let's
me
go.
ask this question. If Ben Simmons starts the season off first 10, 15 games, he's playing well, he's giving you 8 points, 8 assists a game, giving you some rebounds, he's giving you defense. Does he have trade value? I mean, then that's what have to eat part of his contract, but could we trade him and get some second round picks for him? Would there be a market for him if he's playing well through 20 games?
Yeah,
Pete?
I don't see any
Yes.
first. I don't see
No
any
first. No first. That's it. That ship sailed. Maybe 2-3 seconds.
Let me get Pete. So you guys, Pete, go ahead.
All right. This is what I'll say. I'll say about that. Man, 40 million is a lot of money to take back in a trade. I think me and Gary might have been talking about this right before we went on. You're gonna have to take about 2 or 3 players to make up that 40 million, or 1 or 2 big bad contracts that are probably gonna go longer than this year, right? Do the Nets want to do that? Probably not. It might suck to say this, but the best outcome may be just letting the contract expire or buying him out. Like guys, like I know John, I know is very big on this. I've been very against him on this. Like it's nice to I'd love to get something back for Ben Simmons, even if it is a second rounder. And maybe there is a team and a universe that can happen. But as of right now, I just don't see it happening.
Pete, I got a hypothetical for you. Let's look at a team like the Clippers. Many people are saying right now that they're a bottom 8, 9, or 10 seed, play-in seed. They're not saying that anywhere top 5, and I agree with them. Look at Kawhi Leonard with his knee. How much longer can it hold up? They're saying he might deal with the knee injury the rest of his life. James Harden's saying he's ready to be Houston Harden. I think it's a load of bull. A guy who's 35 and he doesn't want to score 50 points anymore. They need another element. They have a lot of guys on contracts, not long contracts.
They just signed Trey Mann to a 3-year extension. They have Harden. They have Mann. Like, what do you? That doesn't provide the scoring.
They have expiring. They have contracts that are movable on that team. If they need a facilitator like a Ben to let Kawhi and James score, that's something they can deal with. But if we can pull something off like that, I'm open to it. They have a lot of contracts to get up. I'll take a deal those contracts.
John, if they're gonna if they're saying, you know what, we might be close to being a bad team, why would they give up picks knowing that they might have to blow it up in a year or two?
I mean, this is Steve Ballmer we're talking about. This guy's one of the richest people in the league. He honestly should have blown it up now while he had the chance, but he seems like he doesn't want to. So if your worst case scenario is Ben Simmons, who, like Gary said, if he's healthy, gives you playmaking, rebounding, and he gives you a couple points and blocks on defense, that's something the Clippers might be willing to take if he's healthy.
They don't
need another point guard, though. That's the issue.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you guys about this rotation. It's going to sound a little weird. You put Schroeder and Cam together, and then you have Simmons run kind of a point forward or a point center, where he would then he'd run the point and then get to the dunker spot, and then you compare him with like Wilson and Cam, or Wilson and DFS. So you'd have a 5 of like Schroeder, Cam, Jalen Wilson, DFS, and Simmons as like the point center.
Let's say that again. What's that starting lineup from point guard to center?
Schroeder, Cam Thomas,
okay,
Jalen Wilson, DFS, or Johnson, pick one, and Simmons as the 5/point guard. So Simmons is your big when he's running the point center, more or less. He's
So,
running
so
the point
you're
and then he's getting to the dunker spot.
so you're not playing DFS at all.
You can put who would you rather play, DFS or Cam Johnson? I would rather play DFS.
You could just say stretch 4 in this scenario. Just to
you got your stretch 4,
small ball 4.
Yeah, small ball 4. Yeah.
Who do you want to talk, Gary? You pick.
Who wants Jonathan? Jonathan never goes first. Go first, Jonathan.
Thank you, Gary. Listen, that starting 5. I mean, if you want to tank, that's a great starting 5. I mean, you want Ben. I mean, first of all, I don't even want to have him bend it forward. I thought he was positionless basketball. Now they want to have him set on something. Okay, I mean, if you want to center his value on something, okay. But if Ben is playing point and center, you have Dennis and Tom. I mean, Dennis is more of like a guy who can play point guard. Thomas is your 2, but having them on this court at the same time, it's going to be very jumbled, man, to see what type of consistent offense you'll get. And then you're asking Ben to do multiple roles. We don't even know if he's fully healthy yet. That's a disaster lineup. But if you're tanking, I'm so with you, Gary. Let's do that lineup.
All right, so you think it's not going to work. You want to use it because it's not going to work. Pete, how about you?
I think it absolutely works on offense for the most part. I did a I don't want to keep on plugging myself. Last plug, I promise.
No, you can plug yourself. We love your channel, Pete. Plug your channel. Yeah.
Yeah, I did an episode breaking down game film of Jordy's offense, and I said in the episode that Ben Simmons would actually be the best point forward for Jordy's offense, and I like that idea. I love that a lot. Pretty much, I'll break it down how the offense works. You pretty much have the center getting the ball at the elbow. There's a lot of action, a lot of players moving around, a lot of read and react. Ben Simmons will be perfect for that. But I think where the issue with your lineup is going to be on defense. Very small. Right. You have the guards on the perimeter who are going to be eaten up alive in the pick and roll. And Ben is a small ball 5. Would you agree with me with that?
For sure. Yes. Yeah.
That's 100%. That's my issue.
LB?
Okay, well, I proposed this on somebody else's podcast a long time ago. You know, the Ben Simmons lover that we know. I said he's not a point guard anymore. I said he's not a point guard. The best thing he could do for the Nets is be closer to the rim, and he can rebound. He can guard taller guys. And he could stop retarding our offense, which he does. Which he does in a half-court offense. Because when he's in a half-court offense, he's rendered ineffective because nobody's scared. They lay off him. He can't shoot, and there are a lot of guys that he can't blow by. And I mean, Ben Simmons's best offense is rebounding the ball or getting it early and just creating a head of steam, and then going, finding people who are open. But other than that, in the half-court offense, he's terrible. And to see that, and so I would rather him play power forward. I'd rather him play the 4, and and then see if he could use some back to the basket game, and then find cutters and everything from there, and then that would be fine. I do think that we'll suffer in the backcourt on defense with Schroeder and Cam Thomas. I think we'll suffer in that way, but and then also with Wilson or Clowney, I would say let them Wilson, Clowney, let them either fight out for the spot or start one of the veterans, because you need shooting. So you do need shooting. And even though Wilson hit them in the summer league and Clowney's still unproven, we still might need to play Cam Johnson. Like, the only reason you don't play Cam Johnson or DFS in this season is if you're hiding them because you feel like they'll get worse. Their trade value will get worse.
There's two more questions I want to address. And I'll start with Pete here. Everyone's favorite player, Cam Thomas. Right now, I want to talk extension for him. If you could get him for a Nick Claxton type contract, $25 million a year for the next 4 years, in that ballpark, would you give it to him right now and extend him?
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned this up. I'm right. I just finished an article on Cam Thomas and the extension that he was probably not going to be getting. I'll break down very quickly. I'm going to break down the CBA because of the CBA. Guys that are in the 2021 draft class have until October 21st to sign an extension. Okay, if they do not sign an extension, they could be offered a qualifying offer, which is basically a 1-year deal that's dependent on your salary and status and service time. That's going to be about 5.9 million for Cam Thomas, or he becomes an unrestricted free agent. When you offer the qualifying offer, you automatically become a restricted free agent, which teams can offer a contract, Nets can match, right?
Right.
So Nets really don't know the market, right? But if you look at Emmanuel quickly, young guard, I don't know if the games are really similar, but I think he's making around like 30 million a year.
Well over 30, yeah.
Right? Like that's a lot of money. It's so hard to say because we don't know what's going to happen this season. But if you could lock CT up for 20 million a year, 25 million, maybe even 25 million, I might even be happy with because he might put up a year that, let's face it, he's the main offensive weapon this year. He might put up 30. So if you could sign him for 25 mil 2 years down the line, that might look like a steal. I think with the roster the way it is right now, with all the cap space that's going to be available starting next season, why not lock him up? You see what happens. The guy's been, a net. You drafted him. I would be happy with that. I think I'd be happy with that deal. I would take it.
I'll bring out LB. Your thoughts?
So to be clear, you said you would offer him the Claxton money now before the 21st.
Yeah, but the money. Keep in mind, the money starts next season.
Right.
So I get what you mean. You mean
Yeah.
it doesn't kick in until next season.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I would do that as well. But what I would probably do with him is I would make it sort of like the Cam Johnson contract where it would be heavy. It
Descending.
would be
Down
definitely descending, because if he becomes unhappy with having to tank a second year, or if he becomes unhappy with maybe we have somebody who's cutting into some of his time, then but he's already proven that he can score in this league, he'll be easier to deal even as a young player. Even as a player who's 24 or 25, if his money is lighter in the back end than in the front end. So that's what I would do, because I'm kind of building him up to be like a Jamal Crawford or a Jordan Clarkson. That's how I see him. I don't see him as a starting guard for us on a championship team. That's just my. I see him as a valuable six-man off the bench, and that's probably the going rate. 20 to 25 million or whatever for that. So I'm good with that.
All right, Jonathan.
Listen, if we were able to re-sign Thomas to around $100, $110, $115 million contract with a $20, $25, $26 million salary, it could look like a steal for us. Because let's remember, this would be Cam's first real legit contract of his career. But I also want to rewind us to what Cam said on Media Day. He made 3 bold proclamations. He said he's unguardable in the league. He said he's never going to go back to the bench. Even if the Nets make moves, he's saying, I want to start the rest of my career. And 3, he said he had nothing to prove, in reference to Sean Marks looking for pieces of this team's future. So,
yeah, John, I don't want to start anymore. I want to go to the bench. I want to be a bench player.
No, but Pete, let's look at this too. But wait, Pete, let's look at this too, though, Pete. Cam Thomas, listen, it's his year 4. I know Cam likes to say he's Kobe, he's Michael Jordan, he's Kevin Durant. It's great to have that confidence. I wouldn't want anybody who thinks they should be a starter to not have that confidence. But at the same time, I'd rather you say this when we're trying to compete for a playoff spot. You're saying this when we're tanking. So it's like you're saying you're this. You're saying I appreciate what Jordy wants to do, but I don't want to change my game. Like Thomas is trying to say, I'm optimistic about what you guys want me to do, but at the end of the day, I want to score. And I think we got to see what Thomas does this season going to next summer to see where he's at with his scoring efficiency progress. Has he improved on playmaking defense? If he's done improvements on every one of those things, he does earn his contract. But if he doesn't, I think him and Sean need to have a conversation because I think Sean and Thomas aren't on the same page right now. Every time Sean
Gary,
gets asked a question about Thomas, he deflects. Every time
Hang
Thomas
on.
gets asked about the future, he doesn't want to talk about it. So it's like these two need to have a meeting of the middle after the season and agree to a fair contract and move on. I hope it doesn't deteriorate because I'm not seeing good things between the two of them right now.
hey Gary,
LBL, what were you gonna say?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly say that it is quite possible that Cam Thomas can improve as a player, but not improve his scoring average. You know that
Oh, I
that's
agree.
that's
I
quite
agree.
possible. So
Yeah.
I mean, and this is going to be the first year. I know, like the Cam Thomas stands are like out there. He's going to average 30, and he's going to do all of this and that. But it's like it's so much harder to do that on a scrubby team when everyone knows you're the main scoring threat. He might find that much more difficult and more frustrating having, three guys guard him whenever he gets the ball and this and that, so we have to see how he responds to that.
Right.
It's not in the cards that he's going to respond favorably or unfavorably. I'm just saying that we can't assume that, oh well, now he's gonna have the green light more or less. But I think what Jordy was saying is we want him to be more efficient. So it's like he's going to have a green light with a limit on it, because he's trying to make him into a better ball player. Now, he may not accept that. He may not accept that. And then Jordy's got to do what's best for the team. So, so going forward, I just think with Cam, it's like he might have a better season than this past season and still only average like 19 points. It's quite possible.
Right.
Can I make a quick
See
point
that
on
happening. I can't see his scoring average and going down, but I understand what you're saying. Like he's gonna play more minutes, right? So yeah, I can't see his scoring average going down. Even if
Can
you
I
know
make
what I'm
a
saying.
quick point? Can I make? I'm sorry to cut off.
Yeah,
Gary.
go ahead, Pete. And I got one last
Talking
question I
about-
want to go around with. Go ahead.
Yeah, very, very, very quickly. I think when he's talking about efficiency, CT was 11th in usage percentage. 30% of how can I say this? 30% of the possessions pretty much ran through him, and he
Yeah.
was 19th in field goals missed last year. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Then not a great combination. I think maybe that's what Jordy was referring to, and that of course he's a little bit of a ball hog.
And
But
too many
I digress.
dribbles. Too many dribbles.
Yeah.
He's gonna launch all the grenades. He's gonna take all the difficult shots because there's no other real shot creators on your team.
Absolutely.
So here's the last question I want to ask, and I want everyone to take. So the Nets got all these young guys, misfit island type guys: Maury Bailey, Killian Hayes, Tyrese Martin, Keon Johnson, Zaire Williams, bunch of guys. Jackie Sway will throw in the mix too. I'm going to go last, but I want to hear you guys. Pete, I'll start with you. Who in that group of guys, like the misfit island guys, who's going to break through?
Say those good names again.
All of them. Keon Johnson, Zaire Williams, Amari Bailey, Killian Hayes, Jackie Sway, the whole everybody.
Right.
Who would you look at that group of players? Like I said,
Everyone
the
under
castaways,
25, right?
Yeah.
Everyone under 25, right?
Who's going to break through?
I'll give you some tea. I've had 3 different people in my DMs tell me that Zaire Williams is really looking good. One of them said he's going to be in the rotation this year. So I'm going to go just based off that. It's going to be Zaire Williams. He's a former, top talent in the draft, former first-round pick. Dude's very athletic. He's going to help on defense. He had a lot of trouble with like injuries, bad luck in Memphis. Giving him some time and, him working on his game, maybe he works on his shot a little bit. You could really unlock something there, right? If I had to take a guess, it would be him.
John, same question to you.
Nah, I mean, Pete kind of took a bit of the magic of that answer, but I honestly really do believe that Zaire is a potential breakout for this team. I mean, look at his profile. He's got the 6'9" height. He's got a nice jump shot, but what can he add more to his game? I mean, if he could work on his defense, bulk up a bit more. He was at 195. I think he's around 215, something like that. If he could add more muscle, work on elevating his offense, becoming a rim runner, a better three-point shooter, Zaire could be a real Swiss Army knife off the bench for us a few years from now. He has the potential. I look at guys like Keon and Killian, Watford even. Like, these are guys that can give you something, but the Nets are in a process of evaluating who will fit this future. Not all these guys are going to make the cut, but Zaire has that ability to do it. He has the ability to show that he is worth the 10 pick status that he was given in the draft. And not even to reference what can happen in the future, but Zaire and Claxton, they have somebody that they're very friendly with who's in the West right now. If both those
Oh
guys are
boy,
cornerstones of our rule out something happening one day with that, and I'll leave it at that.
You talking about bringing John Moran here? That's what you're talking about? Is that where we're going with that?
I mean, I could be, but we'll leave that conversation for another time.
John Morant, and then I want VJ, because that combination of John Morant and VJ at the 1 and 2 would be so violent and so aggressive. That would be the most fun team to watch in the NBA for sure. LBL, same question to you. Are you in agreement,
All
or
right.
is there anyone else you see kind of breaking through?
Well, he just made me have like a 90s flashback to Onyx, throw your guns in the air. Okay. But
whoa.
as far as for well, we're not including Clowney, right? You're just talking about the other guys, right?
Right.
So man, I really want to say Keon Johnson, but there's just one thing that bothers me with him is, he stands up too straight when he plays. Like he doesn't play at an angle. And I think that kind of hurts his game. So I'm wondering what kind of development Jordy will have with him, because I think, like, athletically and skill wise, he's just got the total package. I think Keon, because I watched him a lot in the summer, and it wasn't so much everything that he did, but it wasn't so much his production as it was his skill and his athleticism. And it's like it's almost like a guy you just brought off the street and you just say, this guy's a hell of an athlete, but he doesn't know how to play. So that's what I really want to see, and so I'm going to stick with him as my project.
I agree with Zaire. I think he has tremendous upside. He's obviously an athlete. I think he can defend multiple positions. The name that I like a lot, that I'm going to keep throwing out there, is Amari Bailey. He was 10th in his high school recruiting class. Sierra Canyon High School, same high school as Bronny. He's pretty much a jack of all trades offensively. He can play the mid-range. Yeah.
Mr. California basketball.
He's got a mid-range game. He's got a handle. He can play the 1 and the 2. He's got vision. This is a guy that needs to get on the court. I don't even know if he's going to make the roster. Me and John talked about his chances of making not John. Me and Pete talked about his chances of making the roster. Seems slim. I don't care. This guy needs to be on the roster, and he needs to see the floor. Offensively, if he can ever hit the corner 3 consistently, he could be 15 points a game easily off the bench, playing the 1 and the 2. He's got mid-range. He can take the ball. He's got the athleticism. He's above the rim. He's got this. He can handle the rock. There's so much that he can do.
I gotta ask you something, because I didn't watch him in college. I barely watched any college basketball like in the last 5 years, to be honest. But I gotta ask you something. Was he the best player on that team?
On the UCLA team? Or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's hard to say, because I went back and watched all this after the Nets got him.
Yeah.
So I'm really watching him more than I'm watching the game. I don't really want to. I want to say yes, but I'm specifically like scouting him. Like, I'm specifically watching him more than I'm watching the flow of the game.
All right. Okay. So give me a because I don't know about him, and even with Zaire, I really didn't pay attention to him even when we played Memphis. He got very little minutes. If anything, I was more impressed with G.G. Jackson, and I did want him in the draft that year that he was drafted. But but as far as with Bailey, who would you say is his pro comp?
That's a really, really, really good question.
And Pete, if you know, you could jump in.
What's the question?
Bailey, who is his pro comp?
I'm not really sure, man. I just I think if I was looking up information on him, I think Kevin O'Connor named him like a CJ McCollum type player, if I remember correctly.
I mean, that's aggressive, obviously, but he's a 6'5" combo guard who can handle and can score. His only problem is he's not a consistent shooter yet. If he could ever just make corner three.
You know what the issue is, Gary? I'm sorry, I keep on cutting you off. I'm so sorry, man. He didn't make the team in Charlotte last year. He played mostly with the Swarm, their G League team. So if he didn't make Charlotte,
that's concerning to me.
You know, that's an issue.
My question with him is that off the court issue? Because on the court he looks like such. That's on the court. Okay, I know he's got off the court.
You know what, Gary? He's still young. He's still very, very young. He has plenty of time to get it. You're not wrong, right? The talent is there. He was drafted. I think he was 41st overall or something like that. Talent is there. Talent is there for sure. Yep.
And he came out too early too.
He did. They were saying he'd be a lottery pick if he would have went back, but he came out because his mom was linked to John Morant, and he wanted to show up John. There's a whole thing there.
Yeah.
That's for the.
But Gary, the worst thing about I gotta say the worst thing about him, he did not wear a shirt underneath his jacket when he got drafted. He went bare chest.
Oh, damn. Get the guy off the team, Gary. Come on. What is this? You're supposed to run a tight ship here. Like Salmon says, if you ain't clean as a whistle, you got to bug it.
Red flag. Major red flag for me.
Guido alert.
Yo, Jim Tan and Laundry. What's up?
I appreciate everyone coming on. Pete, tell everyone where they can find you once more.
All right, guys. Check out my podcast, Net Fans You Know. Type that into YouTube. If you like it, subscribe. Like I said, I've had former players on, credential media, people like Gary's going to come on. John's going to come on eventually. And yeah, follow me on Twitter, Net Fans You Know also.
LBL?
Sounds great. Sounds great. And I did enjoy his last few broadcasts I watched. It was like really good, especially when you were talking about draft players, and stuff like that. So, but so I'm LBL for Life 1. You can find me on X, or you could find me on Instagram. All right. So enjoy. I'm always on somewhere. Wherever John is, I just follow John.
Whoa, we have a brotherhood now.
John, where can we find you?
I just want to say, fun show tonight, guys. I always enjoy talking basketball with all of you. We always have great conversations. And Gary, that VJ Edgecombe John Morant video, we're going to talk about that, man. That's going to be a conversation for the future. But if anyone wants to talk basketball with me, you can find me at OS91413 at John. I know it's going to be a long season, Brooklyn fans, but let's all keep the conversations going, man, and make this a fun journey because we don't know where it's going, but we're having a fun time thinking where it's going. So let's keep it going.
Gary, I wanted to sneak this in. One last thing. It was about a tweet that I put on there earlier today about when someone said to me, well, and I think it was something that you echoed before too, that, the chances of us getting, a top 3 back-to-back, right? And then what I did was I went in and I did my research and I was like, wow, well, in 87, 88, we got the 3rd pick, Dennis Hobson. And then the next year we got the 4th pick, Chris Morris. About 2 years later, we got Derek Coleman, number 1. The next year we got Kenny Anderson, number 2. Then Philadelphia, 4 years in a row. They got Embiid at 3. They got Okafor at 3. They got Simmons at 1, and then they got Fultz at 1. And then
Evan Turner was somewhere in that too, wasn't he?
Huh?
Oh, that was before, I guess. Yeah.
And then just recently in 23, the Spurs got Wembanyama at 1, and then they got Castle at 4. So to say that it can't happen, it can happen. We just have to tank, stick to the plan, and develop our guys along the way. That's it.
And the Sixers, the Celtics got back-to-back top 3 picks with the Nets picks too. They got And the Lakers too. The Lakers picked number 2 both years. They picked Ball and Ingram. So at 2 and 2, because those 2 years in a row, one was Philly, 2 was the Lakers, and 3 was Boston. 2 years in a row.
But that's what I'm saying. So
it can happen.
We gotta stop thinking, well, it's not going to happen, so let's just go and get the 15th pick. Let's try
You
to win
gotta have some luck
35
involved
games.
too. You gotta get the balls bouncing the right way. But
Yeah.
it can be done. It for sure
Yeah.
can be done.
Okay.
All right, Albert. I thank y'all for coming through.
All
It's a
right.
great show.
Thank
Texas.
you all. Thanks,
Fun for
Gary.
everyone. Have a
Thanks,
good
Pete.
night, Gary.
Thanks,
Have a good
John.
night, Pete and LB. Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Later, y'all.
Good
Great
night,
pod.
y'all.